Every year I stand on the chair and I think, what am I going to share with the community for 3 or 4 minutes about Purim? And this year, obviously, with everything going on in the world, you have to ask, what's our message? We just read the Scroll of Esther, we just read the Megillah, and I believe the Scroll of Esther is something that Jews should not read only twice a year on Purim. We should read it probably every morning. Because the story of Esther and Mordechai and Haman and Achashverosh and Charvaina, every one of them had a role to play. And it's so vital, especially with what we're experiencing. So this morning, don't ask. If you have a dog that gets a stomachache, it's a long night, so you have a lot of hours to prepare what to say. So I had to decipher through a lot of interesting ideas, and this is what I want to share. Something about the Megillah makes no sense, so much so that the Talmud discusses 4 opinions as to which part of the Megillah you're obligated to hear. Do you have to hear it from the beginning, the whole 10 chapters? Do you have to only hear it about when Mordechai gets into the picture? Do you have to hear it only when Haman gets into the picture? Or do you only have to hear it from chapter 6 when the king has his nightmare and he calls in his advisors and then Mordechai gets appointed? The conclusion is, even though there's 4 opinions, the conclusion is the accepted tradition is that we listen to all 10 chapters. And the question is, what do I need to do with this first chapter? There's a king, he had a queen named Vashti, she didn't look good, she was invited to a party, he didn't like her because he was drunk, so he killed her. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 second. So, why do we have to read about it? It's not relevant to Mordechai. Tell us the story about Mordechai and Haman. Why am I reading about the king's party? The Rebbe said something incredible. The Rebbe says that the reason we read about Achashverosh and his 180-day wild banquet that he made for the people of Shushan, which is the people of Persia, is because sometimes we see things going on in the world and we don't realize that it's all part of God's plan. Had the Jews not had Achashverosh not had a party, and then he would not kill his wife, he would never look for a second wife, so Esther would never become the queen, and the whole story of Purim wouldn't play out. Now, if you just looked at the party, you'd say, a bunch of crazy guys. Who makes a 6-month, 180-day party with free booze and food to everyone according to their wishes, with the goblets of the Holy Temple? And you just read a story and say, big deal. Every crazy guy that makes a party, every billionaire that makes a party, I have to make a Megillah about it. But it's important because things go on all the time. People say, Rabbi, what do you think about what happened with the Houthis? What's going to be with the Houthis? 4 months ago, we were busy with the Houthis in Yemen. Now we're busy with Persia. Now we're experts on the UAE and Qatar. We're mamish, we're the world experts. And you say, all these things going on, the world's going to hell. No, it's not. The world's playing out exactly as Hashem wants it to play out. And even though right now you can't see that, because there's missiles flying everywhere, there's a plan. There is a masterful creator and director and producer of this universe, and he knows exactly what he's doing even when we don't comprehend it. And that brings me to my second point, which came about at 5:05 a.m. And that is when Mordechai sends Hasach, Daniel, she sends Daniel to go talk to Esther about what's going on. She refers to the decree against the Jews, and she says the word Yehudim, which means Jews in the plural, but it's spelled in the Megillah in a weird way. It has 2 yuds. Instead of 1 yud, it says Yehudim, Dalet, Yud, Yud, Mem. In 1927, when the previous Chabad Rebbe was arrested by the Soviets, and he was in a terrible, terrible prison, they came to interrogate him. And one of the interrogators was a communist Jew, a Russian communist Jew. And he said to him, you know, my predecessor, the Tzemach Tzedek, once was asked by an enlightened secular Jew, he said, why does it have 2 yuds on the word Yehudim? And the Tzemach Tzedek answered, because there's 2 types of Jews. Every Jew has an animalistic soul. If you study Tanya, you know there's an animalistic soul, there's a godly soul. And each one of them has 10 attributes. And so the 2 yuds represent the 2 tens. The 10 attributes of the godly soul, the 10 attributes of the animalistic soul. Okay, very nice. What does that have to do with Purim? Said the Tzemach Tzedek, some Jews function on their godly soul. Some Jews choose to function on their animalistic soul. And on Purim, guess what? Haman didn't care what kind of Jew you were. Haman didn't care if you were super religious with long payas. How do you say payas? Side locks, whatever the long payas. He didn't care how religious you were. He didn't care how many times you come to shul. You know, sometimes rabbis feel like priests. People say, hello, I'm so sorry. I'm not a priest, I'm a rabbi, no confessions. So, there's 2 types of Jews. And Haman didn't care because you know what? The anti-Semites of the world don't care what kind of Jew you are. They will hunt you down because you're a Jew, and they don't care what level of observance you have. And so on Purim, we gather and we celebrate every member of our Jewish community. There is no such thing as a Jew who doesn't belong in our community. Rabbi, but they're anti-Israel. Okay, I'll pray for them. I'll encourage them to understand that the land of Israel belongs to us. But they are a member of our community and are welcome. And until every Jew in Montana feels welcome and loved in their Jewish community, we cannot rest. And so tonight on Purim, yes, we have a wonderful crowd gathered here. But could you imagine if all the Jews in Montana, okay, there's 4 other Chabad houses, but even if we divided it by 5, we'd still need a room for 1,000 people tonight. So we're not there yet. We need to, every one of us needs to be a representative, to be a Mordechai, to be an Esther, and make sure that every Jew you know, and you say to yourself, but they don't really like Chabad. Who doesn't like a meatball sandwich? What kind of story is that? We even have gluten-free. So no compromises. If you have a friend, it's an open bar. For heaven's sake, whatever your issues are, you can solve it right here. And so l'chaim tonight, that every Jew knows that we shouldn't wait for the anti-Semites to remind us we're Jews. We are proud, we are comfortable, we are fearless, we have perseverance, and we will rock on. And who knows what holiday will come out of this week of getting rid of the most modern day Haman. But l'chaim to a rocking, amazing Jewish community, and thank you to the sponsors that made this happen. L'chaim.